Senator John McCain, Ranking Member of the Senate Committee on Armed Services. Good evening.
Good evening.
Joe Lieberman, again, the Chairman of the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs. Good evening.
Good evening to you. Good
Thank
to be
you,
with you.
gentlemen, for sharing some time with me today. First of all, if we can brief the main goals of this high-profile visit, I would say, in 3 sentences, what would that be?
Well, we have been traveling throughout the Maghreb and the Middle East and trying to keep up with events that are rapidly unfolding. This is obviously a seminal time in the history of the Middle East and the Maghreb.
How is Lebanon relevant in this context?
Well, Lebanon has always been, very frankly, the weather vane of how things are going to go in this part of the world. It is a democracy. It's a highly cultured, educated, and well-known democracy. And Lebanon has been under some assault, as we know, from time to time, and has emerged with increasing challenges, but still a model.
We'll get to that shortly. Mr. Lieberman, again, how do you summarize the goals of this visit? What do you want to accomplish?
Yeah, well, this is obviously a time of historic change in the Arab world, beginning in Tunisia, Egypt, now Libya, etc. And Senator McCain and I wanted to come at this time to learn, to have an understanding of what's happening overall. I think we view it very positively, that these uprisings, revolutions really, have been peaceful, popular, democratic revolutions, and they provide a path forward which is, for the Arab world, which is different from the choices that some people thought were only 2 secular dictatorships on the one hand, or religious and violent extremism on the other. Lebanon, as Senator McCain said, is in some senses ahead of all this because it's been a democracy for a long time. It has its own problems, we all know, but it doesn't have the problem of a secular or
but
authoritarian
it hits
government.
me probably that the revolution taking place in Lebanon is kind of counter to what's taking place in different states, in Egypt, in Tunisia, in Libya. And Mr. McCain, you told Fox News that the cabinet in Lebanon has been hijacked by Hezbollah. I want you to elaborate more on this and how this assessment will affect your treatment, your approach to the Lebanese government.
Well, first of all, Lebanon is in a serious situation. We not only have the new government, which has been at least the cause of the change of government was Hezbollah. We also have the results of the tribunal about to come out, some of which information has been leaked, which could directly implicate Syria and Hezbollah. So, and it's also clear that the Prime Minister designate has had difficulty in forming a government. So it's an unsettled time in Lebanon, but it's a different kind of unsettled time. I want the people of Lebanon to have a government that truly represents them. Hezbollah has been branded a terrorist organization, and I worry a great deal if they would gain control of the government and the democracy here in Lebanon.
The idea that this cabinet, Hariri's cabinet, has been hijacked by Hezbollah, and this is what you told Fox News on the 2nd of February.
Yeah. What I meant was that Hezbollah has pressured certain parts of the coalition government to change their votes, to oust the Hariri government and install a new government. Now, we met with the Prime Minister designate. He says that he is going to try to have an inclusive and democratic government. But the fact remains that Hezbollah calls the shots as to what ultimately this government will do.
Does this fact make of the Prime Minister designate Mikati an illegitimate Prime Minister designate? Or his cabinet an illegitimate cabinet?
It depends on what the Prime Minister designate Mikati does, and this is what Senator McCain and I said to him today. We respect him as an individual. We know he's been a successful businessman, but there is an impression which his actions can alter, that he is being directed by Hezbollah. Hezbollah has been designated by the United States Department as a terrorist organization. What you said in opening this part of the discussion is quite right, that insofar as Hezbollah represents an extreme kind of politicized approach to religion, it is not consistent with this peaceful, democratic uprising occurring throughout the Arab world. So look, the choice of what kind of government Lebanon has is up to the Lebanese people, but the choices can have consequences, and if this is a government in which the next government is a government in which the Hezbollah is playing a dominant role, or the tribunal is rule of law is rejected, that will have very significant negative consequences on America's relationship with Lebanon.
There's a piece
could I just
go ahead, please.
It's been leaked that the tribunal will hold responsible both Hezbollah and Syria. Hezbollah is in violation of UN Security Council resolution that calls for the disarmament of Hezbollah. Hezbollah is dedicated to the extinction of the state of Israel. I respect Lebanese people's right to choose their own government, but I have no doubt about the intentions of Hezbollah.
Currently, there is a piece of legislation that being proceeded in the House in the United States that will affect the aid, the U.S. aid to the Lebanese government if this government is under the control of Hezbollah. For me, this is kind of theoretical a little bit, because how would you decide what are the factors that make the decision that this cabinet is under the control of Hezbollah and then eligible for cutting the aid? And
I think one thing, we would know by the composition of the government. Second of all, what I would advocate would be, if that's the case, and that's determined to be the case, and the tribunal, by the way, also findings will have some effect, then a suspension of aid until we can be confident that American arms and equipment does not fall into the hands of Hezbollah. That's the assurance that we need. So I think it would be, what would be appropriate would be a suspension of aid. If we want to help the people of Lebanon, we want to help this incredibly beautiful culture.
But how? I mean, if I may rude here, I mean, there is a joke in Lebanon that all what the United States offered Lebanon is old, used Humvees and not actual weapons that will be, usable in any kind of combat, be it against terrorist organizations, defending the country against Israel, whatever it is. I mean,
well, that's certainly not the intention of Congress. Congress had a vision here, which was to help Lebanon, and particularly the Lebanese armed forces, and particularly as part of alongside the UN resolution, which calls for the disarming of separate militias, particularly Hezbollah, but not only Hezbollah. So it'll be an unfortunate turn of events, and one that we hope does not happen. But it's very important for us to be very open and honest here that the rising influence of Hezbollah in the government and the fear that the money we send here for the Lebanese armed forces will either go in some sense to Hezbollah or its use will be directed by Hezbollah is troubling members of Congress. There's no legislation in the Senate now on this, but there is a bill in the House, and it gives the Secretary of State the authority to suspend. Because the definition of what has to happen before suspension or termination of the funding is a difficult one to arrive at. We have a budget problem in America. We have a big deficit, and members of Congress will be looking for ways to save money. And
but again, it's the assistance, the aid given by the United States to the Lebanese army is not looked at in terms of dollar amount. Probably it's $500 million. It's a big amount. But in terms of the itemized list that you look at, it's really
but I have never
Humvees and cars and that stuff.
I have never known a country that receives military assistance from the United States of America that doesn't want more. They always want the most sophisticated equipment, the F-35, the F-22, whatever it is that they want. I think we have been helpful, and those millions of dollars have not been wasted. And I think it has helped increase the professionalism and capability of the Lebanese army.
the U.S. Treasury decision to blacklist one of the major Lebanese banks due to alleged money laundering, due to alleged Hezbollah links that needs to be figured out, was read in Lebanon as a message to Prime Minister Mikati that, look, Mr. Prime Minister, we are ready for tough measures if you fell under the control of Hezbollah. Was the message correct? I mean, is this the message that we need to read here?
Well, I don't think so. Of course, this is a decision that was made by the executive branch of the American government, not by Congress. But the way I understand it, and I've been briefed on it, is that this series of charges against the Lebanese Canadian bank emerged from a very separate and distant investigation by the Drug Enforcement Administration about the laundering of drug money. And they followed a single piece of evidence. This has been going on for 5 years. I know it's hard for people to believe, but I've asked this question of those in the Treasury Department working on this case, and they say that the timing of the legal action was coincidental. I understand how people here might feel otherwise, but it's a very serious case, only directed at this one bank, and it happens to have been the Lebanon Canadian Bank.
I'd like to hear Senator McCain's take on this, and if the Congress is ready to impose certain measures on the Mikati government, if this government ends up under the control of Hezbollah.
First of all, I understand that bank officials and government officials from Lebanon are on their way to the United States to sit down and discuss this with the American government. I hope it can be resolved that way. Obviously, it depends on the extent of this and how serious the involvement is. Look, the stories that have been published, it reads like a bad novel. I mean, Taliban, used cars, all that kind of stuff. But it's not in United States' interest to see a weakened Lebanon. And we want to have good relations. We want to see a peaceful relationship between Israel and Lebanon. And so I don't think the United States of America has any interest in harming the economy of Lebanon.
But to be honest with you, the view in Lebanon, even among liberal journalists, even among U.S.-friendly media, the view is that Washington is not really doing much to resolve the existing issues between Lebanon and Israel. Take, for example, Shabab Farms. Take, for example, Al-Ghajar. Even the tiny things, and I say tiny in the sense of the broader context of the struggle between Arabs and Israel. Nothing is really being done on a conclusive level to get rid of these issues on the table. What's your take on that?
Well, my take respectfully is that whether you agree with what President Obama has done or not, he really focused on this early in the administration, not specifically the Israeli-Lebanese relationship, but the Israeli-Palestinian relationship. They continue to focus on it. Progress is not being made. My guess is that so long as there are the changes moving across the region, that the risks that the Palestinian and Israeli leaders will have to take for peace they'll be more reluctant to take until they get some sense of where the pieces in the various countries, including particularly Egypt, settle down. Look, it would be Senator Mitchell, our former colleague in the Senate, is President Obama's special emissary here. I know he continues to explore not only the Israeli-Palestinian track, but has in mind the Lebanese-Israeli and Syrian-Israeli track. He himself happens to be half Lebanese-American, so he has a real historic personal interest in this, and obviously it would be wonderful if there could be a breakthrough here.